Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be going in depth into my week number 11 wide receiver start or sit decisions for the 2023 fantasy football season. Inside today's video, we're going to be going in depth through every single game from Thursday Night Football all the way until Monday Night Football at the wide receiver position. I'll be telling you guys whether I believe you should start or sit the wide receiver in all of those games. But before we could get into things, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. So without further ado, let's get into my week number 11 wide receiver start or sit decisions for the 2023 fantasy football season. We begin with Thursday Night Football, the Cincinnati Bengals at the Baltimore Ravens. Now, it is safe to assume right now on Tuesday that T. Higgins will not be playing in this game for the Cincinnati Bengals. Is that a lock? Definitely not, but I would think since this game is on Thursday Night Football, the team will be without T. Higgins. Jamar Chase is going to be a start for me. Jamar Chase looked mighty fine like Kate Upton in 2011 last week, having 5 receptions on 6 targets for 124 yards and a touchdown in a loss up against the Houston Texans. A very nail-biter game at the end of things. The matchup against the Ravens on paper definitely isn't the best, but you would be an insane person to sit down one of the best wide receivers in the NFL regardless of the matchup. Tyler, Boyd, like I said, Higgins is probably out again, in my opinion, elevating Boyd to be the wide receiver 2 in targets on the Bengals. He balled out last week against the Texans with 12 targets for 8 receptions and 117 yards. I expect him to be a fringe start this week due to the matchup. Plus, we have seen Joe Burrow throw the ball a decent amount to Trenton Irwin as well. Speaking of Trenton Irwin, he's going to be a sit for me. The Crocodile Wrangler himself continues to get targets when Higgins is out. This week, though, I don't think he's going to luck box into scoring a touchdown, so he would be a sit for me. And again, I do still think that Tyler Boyd should out-target him in this spot against the Ravens on Thursday Night Football. For the Ravens at the wide receiver position, things are a little bit gross right now. Now, Flowers is a lot like Tyler Boyd, as he is a fringe start for me. Now, the Bengals defense is looking a little Charmin Ultra Soft as of recently, but I still think he will show up here in a division rivalry game. Last week against a strong Cleveland defense, he had 5 receptions for 73 yards, and I think he could put up similar numbers this week. If he scores, you'll probably be happy that you started Zay Flowers, and if he doesn't, he'll probably be like the wide receiver 28 through 36, and you won't really be mad that you started him, but you also won't be super excited. When it comes to the other Ravens wide receivers like Odell Beckham Jr. and Rashad Master Bateman, I would be sitting both of them. Now, Odell has scored in Michael Jordan 96-97 back-to-back weeks, and if he does it one more time, I will be willing to start him. But until I start seeing more consistency with the targets, it's hard for me to believe that that will be the case, right? He has been very up and down. There's games where he's getting 6-7 targets, and then last week, the guy has like 2 targets. So again, that isn't very reliable. Rashad Master Bateman just continues to just not get the usage that I thought he would get entering into the season. Getting like 3 targets a game just isn't going to cut it if we are being honest. Now we move to the Sunday slate of games. No Germany, no London, no waking up at 9:30 a.m. to a snooze fest this week. The Pittsburgh Steelers at the Cleveland Browns, another AFC North rivalry matchup. Now, most sportsbooks have this game as the lowest over-under total on the week. And I agree with them, because this feels like a game that is going to be real chippy, a low-scoring game that's kind of heavily reliant on the run game, and then whoever has that big burst of a play from a receiver where Deshaun Watson hits a guy deep, or maybe Deshaun Watson is able to maybe just run the ball himself, that huge play is what might be the reason why either team wins the game. Now, Deontay Johnson, I'm fully aware that last week he was just not very involved at all, and the passing attack this season for the Steelers has been relatively limp dick. And again, Deontay shit the bed against the Packers. I had really high hopes for him last week, and things didn't work out, but I feel like he should get his 8 targets this week and be the wide receiver 20 to 32, which is start worthy. Not a must start guy, But especially with the Browns defense being so tough, I don't think I could really rank him much higher. Now, I can just do the Men in Black thing where they put the pen looking thing in your face and it erases your memory, right? If he was going up against like the Raiders or something like the Dolphins are, I'd be like, okay, you just throw that one in your back pocket. Deontay Johnson's back to kind of the must-start range, but since he's going up against the Browns, he sits in the wide receiver 20 to 32 range. There's some upside there, of course, if he gets fed and scores a touchdown, but who knows how many targets he's going to get if the Browns, or how good the targets are going to be if the Browns defense continues to look stout. Now, George Pickens did look better than Deontay Johnson last week, but Pickens is a big play guy, and those big plays are less likely to happen up against defenses like the Browns. Whereas Deontay Johnson, he might get 10 or 12 targets potentially in this game. Pickens is going to need to turn his potential 5 or 6 into a big play and score to be start worthy. Allen Robinson, A-Rob, and Calvin Austin kind of rotate as the wide receiver 3 on the Steelers, and you don't want to start the wide receiver 3 on a Kenny Pickett small hands man-led offense. For the Browns, Amari Cooper has looked great in both of the games since Watson has returned. Again, this is a rough matchup. This isn't some soft serve, soft as baby shit matchup. Things are going to be hard here. This is going to be a lower scoring game. So we can't really rank Cooper super high, but he should finish in that similar range that we talked about with Deontay Johnson. Elijah Moore looked mighty fine last week, and as someone who is a Elijah Moore believer, I love to see that in Baltimore. 5 receptions on 7 targets for 44 yards and a touchdown. This week he faces another tough matchup, and I just don't really see things going that well yet again. Cedric Tillman with Donovan Peoples-Jones now in Detroit. Tillman is the wide receiver 3, and that's all I really need to say about him. Next up, we move to the Chicago Bears at the Detroit Lions. Now, Amon-Ra St. Brown, I say this every single week, so I might sound like a broken record at this point, but it remains true every single week. Amon-Ra St. Brown, the Sun God, is one of the most consistent wide receivers in fantasy football all season long. And this man went absolutely crazy in LA last week up against the Chargers. 8 receptions for 156 yards with 2 carries for 9 yards and a touchdown as the wide receiver 4 in PPR. This matchup is really solid here and reeks of another top 5 game for the Sun God. The other Lions receivers, we got Josh Reynolds and Jameson Williams. Even with the Lions offense being a certified wagon, this is a team that any given game could drop their nuts and score 50 fucking points. And the problem here is, though, this offense is heavily funneled in terms of the passing attack through Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta. And then the other part of the offense is just a dominant chains and whips rushing attack by Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. So it kind of just leaves Reynolds and Jameson Williams out to dry, so I would stay away from them. Jameson Williams, I wasn't even going to say too much about him because I think that what I said about Josh Reynolds applies to Jameson Williams. I just found out that Jameson Williams, he posted this on his Instagram story, that he puts a McFlurry. He doesn't eat a McFlurry with his burger. He puts the McFlurry on the burger. Now, again, I'm not here to judge what you guys like to eat. I probably like some things that you guys don't like, or I don't like some things. I don't really like Chinese food. I know people are going to be like, Nick, how the fuck do you not like Chinese food? I've had it a bunch of times. I just don't like it. I just don't get why the hell you would put your McFlurry on the burger. That is absolutely fucking disgusting. And if anyone does that, I think that's a little bit weird. I saw on TikTok the other day that people were talking about putting putting ketchup on their rice, which I also don't understand one bit. So Jameson Williams hasn't really done much on the field and is a real sicko off the field, apparently. DJ Moore, wiki, Bears safety Jaquan Brisker said today that Fields looks very good and that he should be ready for Sunday's game. With that said, if that is the case, the upside of DJ Moore has greatly increased. If Tyson Bagent is under center yet again, Moore moves to kind of the fringe start range. Darnell, here comes the Mooney. Exactly what I expected to happen after a solid game of Week 9 up against the Saints happened last week against the Panthers. He has a great game, and then he's back on that same bullshit. He's back to being the Darnell Mooney we are used to. So don't overthink things, even if Fields starts. sit him. Tyler Scott, there's no way I'm starting the wide receiver 3 on the Chicago Bears. Next up, we got the LA Superchargers at the Green Bay Packers, and this is a game where things are as simple as Jack from Tropic Thunder here, because it's very easy to figure out which wide receiver you want to start in this game, and that is Keenan Allen. Now, Keenan Allen is considered day-to-day right now with a shoulder injury. This is something to monitor as the week goes along. I'm as much of a doctor as Johnny Sins, so I don't know for sure if he's going to play. But assuming, and sometimes an assumption makes an ass out of you and me, we are going to assume he plays, and if he plays, you start him. Allen was the wide receiver 1 last week, and he has had 9 or more targets in 5 straight games. Him and Eckler are the whole entire Chargers offense. And even with Brandon Staley being a certified bozo, you gotta start Keenan Allen every single week, regardless of the matchup. Quentin Johnston, I talked about QJ in the waiver wire video from Monday, and I do think if you're in a tough spot, you could play him, but for me, I need to see him get more targets reliably before I can start rolling him out there confidently. Back-to-back weeks with 4 or less targets just leaves me a little bit bitter when it comes to Johnston. I know the guy has the talent, he showed that off in college, but until Justin Herbert, the pervert, and this offense truly commits to giving him more targets, like he's a Mike Williams type of player, I don't think you can really trust him. He did score last week, and I do believe he's a good player in an offense with a solid quarterback, but until he starts to truly get force-fed the rock, I can't list him as a start. With that said, if for some reason Keenan Allen misses, I would be blindly firing up QJ like my name was Stevie Wonder. Jalen Guyton, just like Johnston, ended up finding the end zone last week, and somehow he had more targets than the first-round pick with 6. Nothing to Galaxy Brain here, though. Sit him down. Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, and Christian Watson, for me, are all sits on the Packers. Now, Doubs has been in the wide receiver 30th range over the last few games outside of a dud Week 9 game up against the LA Rams. The matchup here is good, but we haven't seen a great game out of him since, like, Week 4. I just am avoiding the Packers outside of Musgrave and Aaron Jones as of right now, as that Jordan love me tender, love me sweet that we saw at the beginning of the season has not been the guy that we have seen run out the tunnel over the last couple of weeks. Now, Jaden Reed looked good up against the Steelers last week. 5 receptions on 5 targets for 84 yards and a touchdown. Again, he could do good against the Chargers. But as of right now, with Love kind of in that slump, I just don't want to start him. Christian Watson has been a complete and utter fucking disaster. I was a Christian Watson truther all summer long, like the Kid Rock song. I was banging the drum like we were going into fucking battle against the British. And what I would tell you is I was wrong, because Christian Watson just hasn't been very involved at all. He hasn't even cracked the top 50 wide receivers since Week 5. Again, I love Christian Watson. I hope that he miraculously pulls a rabbit out the hat. But at the end of the day, right now, Watson is not even deserving of a roster spot. I would much rather have Romeo Doubs or Jaden Reed over Christian Watson on my squad. Next up, we got the Las Vegas Raiders at my Miami Dolphins in Miami. If you look at the Dolphins under Mike McDaniel, at home with Mike McDaniel, this Dolphins team is a certified wagon like we talked about with the Lions. This is a team that is going to just beat the ever-living shit out of a defense. It's like the defense isn't allowed to even put their hands up, and Tua, Tyreek, Waddle, Mostert, A-Chain are just smashing every button on the goddamn controller, and at the end of the game, they hit them with a finisher, Mortal Kombat style. So up against the Raiders, a pretty bad team in my opinion, in Miami, things are going to get brutal here, and I think Tyreek is going to go fucking nuclear. Now, Tyreek absolutely sold the game for the Dolphins in Germany. I still think that they should have called forward progress. We saw a couple forward progress calls on Sunday. That's like, hey, where was Tyreek's forward progress? But it is what it is. I'm not going to complain about the refs. The Dolphins should have played better, so I'll take that one on the chin. Pause. But Reek kind of sold the game with that fumble in Germany. Guten Tag. Prior to the bye. With that said, though, he's a must-start every single week, and up against the Raiders' defense, he could easily be the wide receiver numero uno, the head honcho, the head of the table. Shout out Roman Reigns. The Dolphins, normally, like I said, shit all over these bad teams at home, and that is the case. That will be the case come Sunday against the Raiders. Now, Jalen Waddle has been banged up for basically most of the season. He's been popping a perk 30 and playing in these games, rolling off the Toradol or something. They had to put like a back patch on him in a couple of games. Sucks, and that impacted him again in Germany against the Chiefs. Waddle says he feels healthy, so I'm just going to believe him, and he should be a top 24 guy here up against the Raiders. Cedric Wilson scored in back-to-back weeks, but with how many weapons the Dolphins have, there's really no reason to take a shot on a guy like Wilson, especially since River Craycraft, my boy River Minecraft, is back. They also got Braxton Berrios and a couple of other pieces as well, depending on who they activate come Sunday. Maybe Chosen Anderson will be out there. For the Raiders, Adams has been in that slump over the last 4 games, but Aiden O'Connell continues to feed him the rock. And even if it doesn't lead to fantasy points, it's very promising that Aiden O'Connell, despite being a rookie that wasn't drafted super highly, has the wherewithal to just be like, hey, Davante Adams might be one of the better receivers to ever touch the gridiron, so maybe I should just force feed him the ball. And again, it doesn't work every single time, but it's good that he knows that, so at least you feel like Adams is going to be getting targets when he goes out there. Now, do I like this matchup? Fuck no, baby, against the Dolphins, but it feels like at some point he's going to be back on top of the world, as a top 12 receiver. Jacoby Myers. Now, it is very easy to argue that Myers has been the more consistent piece in this Raiders offense compared to Adams this season. Last week, though, the wheels kind of fell off the bus that normally go round and round with just 2 targets, and over the last 3 games, the targets have not really been there like they were earlier on in the season. I'm not ready to jump ship on Myers, but I will have to put him in the fringe start category, as it is no longer a lock that he's a guy that's going to get 6+ targets in most games, as he has not done that in the last 3 weeks. Hunter Renfrow, now Josh McDaniels gone, seems like maybe Hunter Renfrow has escaped the doghouse. Maybe Renfrow bagged his wife or something, but it's just a little bit of Renfrow. It's not a whole lot of bit, so even though he's got a lot of grit, he's a real lunch pail guy. The guy you'd want to date your daughter. Sit Hunter Renfrow down. Next up, we got a riveting matchup of the New York Football Giants going up against the left hands up. Who are we? The Commanders in Washington. Tommy DeVito and the Sopranos versus the Commanders. Now, Terry McLaurin definitely went a little cold last week in Seattle, despite a solid performance offensively from the Washington Commanders. He still had 8 targets, though. The targets only resulted in 4 receptions for 33 yards. Besides last week, though, he has been a lock to be a top 24 option most weeks. This spot against the Giants is a solid spot for Scary Terry to bounce back, and he could potentially be a top 12 wide receiver this week, which would be the first time on the season for Terry McLaurin. Jahan Dotson, if you thought McLaurin cooled off, Dotson hopped into the fucking water in the Arctic where the polar bear from those old school Coke commercials lived. 2 targets, he was in fucking Club Penguin land. 2 targets for 0 receptions. For me, a bounce back feels imminent here, just like with McLaurin. And if he doesn't, we kind of enter that purgatory zone with Dotson again, to where we can't really start him, but we also really don't want to cut him. But it's like, not looking the best. Curtis Samuel as Captain Spock calls him, had his run of 3 solid games from weeks 4 through 6, but at the end of the day, that is all Samuel is. He's a streaky player that a couple times a season, he'll have like a 2 or 3 stretch of games where he's balling. But once the wheels fall off, once he starts to cool off, you have to abandon ship. For the Giants, with Tommy DeVito under center, if you start any wide receiver on the Giants, even against the Commanders' defense, you are smoking some next-level stuff. You might even be on that toad venom or something. You might be on that Aaron Rodgers ayahuasca. I am not even going to talk about these guys in depth. Sit them all. Wandale, Slayton, and Darius. Slayton and Jalen Hyatt, my bad there. Next up, we move to the Dallas Cowboys at the Carolina Panthers. Another riveting game here. If you guys have enjoyed thus far, hit that subscribe button down below. If you are new, and whether you are new to the channel or not, make sure you leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. So we got CeeDee Lamb versus the Panthers. Now, despite a very slow start to the season, it was a tortoise versus the hare race. You know what I'm saying? Slow and steady wins the race. He comes out the gate slow. 5 weeks of straight up ass. right? He had like one solid game in there. The rest, it was like, no bueno. Maybe we fucked up drafting CeeDee Lamb. Time to panic. And I said, no. The Kembe, no. Do not panic. He's going to be just fine. And now Lamb appears to be a LW, which is a league winner. 3 straight weeks inside the top 2 at the wide receiver position, and there is no reason to believe that he takes the foot off the gas this week against the Panthers. This man has gotten 14 or more targets in 3 straight weeks with over 150 yards in every single one of those games. With Dak on fire like a marshmallow, Lamb is a lock to be a top 3 wide receiver in my rankings this week. Now, Brandon Cooks absolutely whacked the Giants last week like his name was Tony Soprano. 9 receptions on 10 targets for 173 yards and a touchdown as the wide receiver 3 on the week. Though, when you put things into context, this is his first game with more than 4 targets since week 3, which is like a decade ago at this point in the season in week 11. If you want to start Cooks, I get it. But I mean no one, and I mean no one should be shocked at all if he goes back to 4 targets for 4 receptions and 50 yards on Sunday, which is what we've become accustomed to with Cooks this season. Now, maybe he tore through that hymen, you know what I'm saying? He popped the cherry, and maybe now it's Brandon Cooks season. But right now, kind of keeping it on the low. Michael Gallup also scored on Sunday, and that's because Dak was on his Oprah shit. You get a touchdown, you get a touchdown, you all get a touchdown, baby. With that said, he has had 3 or fewer targets in 3 straight games. No reason to galaxy brain here, start thinking too much, and start him even up against a garbage Panthers defense. Adam Thielen has been on a 2-game skid after being dominant 50 Shades of Grey style earlier on in the season. Going up against the Dallas defense, I expect the skid to continue. Now, I don't expect it to be so bad to where you got to sit him because he's going to get enough targets to be fine at the end of the week, but this isn't going to be a top 10 game, more than likely out of Thielen, unless he just puts up some garbage time points at the end of the game, Tommy DeVito style last week against the Cowboys. The other Panthers receivers, we got Jonathan Mingo, Terrence Marshall Jr. Mingo, I have said this all year, but I think if the Packers offense and Bryce Young were to fully unlock themselves, if they were to reach their maximum potential, they figure this shit out, then Mingo is a skilled enough prospect to step up and have a late season hammer type end to the season. But at this point, we might be waiting until next year to see that. Terrence Marshall, just not very involved to me. The wide receiver 3 on the team in terms of targets just doesn't really mean anything on the Carolina Panthers. Next up, we got game number 8, which is about the halfway point in the video. Technically, game 7 would have been, which is the last game. But before we get into the Tennessee Titans that lay Titans at the Jacksonville Jaguars, as well as the rest of the games all the way up until Monday Night Football, I would like to give you guys a quick word from our friends and our sponsor over at Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is the best place to play NFL Pick'em in the whole entire universe, and Underdog has a great offer for you guys today that we'll be talking about in just a couple of seconds. But first, I want to explain how Underdog's Pick'em game works. Now, I'm recording today's video after Monday Night Football. It's early Tuesday morning. It's like 1 a.m. So not all of the Pick'em picks are out yet. But for right now, we got the Bengals versus the Ravens in Baltimore on Thursday Night Football. For this game, we're going to have to go ahead and pick a minimum of 2 players from at least 2 different teams. So we're going to go with 1 player from the Bengals, 1 from the Ravens. We're going to go with Joe Burrow, higher than half an interception, and we're going to go with Lamar Jackson, higher than half an interception. I think the defenses are going to get at least 1 pick each in this game, and I think that is how this game is going to play out. It's going to be a close, gritty game between 2 AFC North rivalry teams. So if both of those picks hit, if Joe Burrow and Lamar both throw an interception, then we'll get 3 times our entry fee. If you do 3 picks, it is 6 times, 4 picks is 10 times, and 5 picks is 20 times your entry fee. Now, if you're new to Underdog Fantasy and live in one of these states on your screen right now, if you use promo code Notorious or click on the link in the video description, you will receive a first match deposit bonus of up to $100. If you deposit $100, they give an additional $100, $50, additional $50, $25, additional $25. The minimum deposit on Underdog Fantasy is $10. If you have a gambling problem, please make sure that you call 1-800-GAMBLER. Back on into things here. They lay Titans at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now we'll talk about the Jaguars first because they are definitely a more fun offense to talk about. Now, despite the Jags getting absolutely bent over a table, fucking bukake'd by the San Francisco 49ers, it was brutal to watch. It was like, it was just bad. It was like the Jaguars come out the bye, and they just look flat. The 49ers come out the bye, and they look the exact opposite. They look ready to go. They look ready to run through a wall. And the Jaguars were just fully limp dick. Now, even with that said, Kirk still had 6 receptions on 11 targets for over 100 yards. He was really the only player on the Jaguars that actually showed up on Sunday. He is the safest piece on this offense, not named Travis Etienne. And to me, anyone with half of a brain would realize that you need to roll him out up against a bottom-of-the-barrel Titans pass defense. Now we got Calvin Ridley. Now, even against a garbage pass defense, I am just done with Calvin Ridley. Friendship ended with Calvin Ridley. He is a guy where you could argue about starting him because the matchup's a wet dream, this, that, the other thing. But at this point, I am done with Calvin Ridley. He looked so good in preseason. He looked so good in all the training camp clips. He came out the season on fire, having a great game against the Colts. And after that, it has been nothing but absolutely terrible for Calvin Ridley. I don't know what to say about it because I don't know if it's his fault, if it's Trevor Lawrence. It seems like an amalgamation of bullshit that is going against Calvin Ridley right now. Now, I know he has been so bad this season, I just don't know how I could tell you to start him. I hope this is a huge game. I hope that he balls out on your bench. And it's like, okay, now Calvin Ridley is back. He's ripped the Band-Aid off. It's Calvin Ridley season again. But as of right now, I'm not starting him. He hasn't had a good game since week 5. Jamal Agnew feels like the wide receiver 3 with this Zay Jones situation. He's a talented enough guy, but you're really hoping for a pipe dream if you start Jamal Agnew. For the Tennessee Titans, DeAndre Hopkins, the quarterback play from Levis has taken a nosedive over the last 2 weeks. Obviously, the man was just cracked out of his mind up against the Falcons. It was truly an amazing sight to behold. One of the best rookie games for a quarterback. No slouch CJ Stroud, who had a better game, but that was his first ever start. But he still looks fine enough to me for Hopkins to be a worthy start against the Jaguars defense. Levis loves feeding Hop the ball. It just sucks that the targets aren't really that accurate a lot of the times. But hey, anything is better than Ryan Tannehill. We got Kyle Phillips and Nick Westbrook, Ikain, and Kyle Phillips is the other options. I don't think Burks is going to end up playing. Phillips has turned heads over the last few weeks. Now, he hasn't had any huge games, but to me, he looks a lot better than I thought he would. With that said, you would be crazy, loco, if you wanted to start him. Nick Westbrook, Ikain, you should honestly argue that Phillips is the better wide receiver 2 on the team right now. Sit him down. Game number 9 here, the Arizona Cardinals at the Houston Texans. Now, there are some questions with the Texans. The Cardinals, a lot more. You know, we're keeping things short and sweet with the Cardinals, just like their quarterback, Kyler Murray. Hollywood Brown, he's a start. I know that last week in Kyler's return game, Hollywood didn't really show up. He just had 1 reception on 4 targets for 28 yards. But to me, there is no need to worry, as Kyler Murray didn't just look back like, oh, look, there's Kyler. He's kind of himself. No, this looked like Kyler Murray was shot out of a fucking cannon. He looked like the Kyler Murray that we are used to, which is very nice. I like my name of Borat for Hollywood Brown. Now, again, is this a great matchup on paper? No. Is it a terrible matchup? No, either. It's an all right matchup. But Hollywood should finish in the range of wide receiver 20 to 28 at the very least, so I'm fine starting Hollywood. Rondale Moore was feasting on targets like Ezekiel Elliott at a buffet. He had 8 targets with 5 receptions for 43 yards against the Falcons. If Kyler keeps spreading the ball around, then we might need to start tempering our expectations on Hollywood, especially with how good Trey McBride has looked right now, though I'm staying away from these other Cardinals pieces. Michael Wilson has looked good when given opportunities this season, but again, like Rondale, if McBride is being fed and then Hollywood gets a lot more targets this week, there's really no reason to take a stab on the ancillary options right now for the Arizona Cardinals. For the Texans, Nico Collins missed last week against the Bengals with a calf injury. This is something that you are going to have to monitor all week long. Let's see the practice report tomorrow. And this might even be one where you're waiting until Sunday morning to truly know if he's going to be good to go or not. If he is against the Cardinals, I will play him. but I don't think he's a guarantee to go as of right now. Tank Dell, the computer man, top 12 wide receiver in back-to-back weeks with 11 or more targets. Now, he faces a putrid Cardinals defense. He could easily be a repeat top 12 option for 3 weeks in a row, 3 straight, like he's Michael Jordan. He is a boom or bust player, but with the upside alone, he needs to be in your lineups. Noah Brown has also been on cracked. He's been cracked. Not on crack. Lamar Odom, who was on crack. He's just been cracked. It's a different term, meaning he's been playing out of his mind. He's been playing unreal. He's been a top 6 receiver in 2 straight games with over 150 yards in both outings. Even if Nico Cousin, let's go bowling Collins returns, I am just going to YOLO. I know that's a term you probably haven't heard since like 2012. And start Brown due to how on fire he is. Next up, we move to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the San Francisco 49ers. The Bucs coming off of a very solid performance against the Titans, and the Niners, like I said with the Jaguars, they just spit roasted the 49ers. It was not even close, if we're being honest with you. Like the 40, I said it wrong? The 49ers spit roasted the Jaguars. I think I fucking mismatched my words there. I apologize. So, when it comes to the Niners, Brandon Ayuk, I feel like with Debo back, Ayuk is actually a safer option now. He did a lot with few targets last week. Why say a lot when few words do a little? Shout out to Kevin from The Office. Last week, getting 55 yards with 3 receptions and a touchdown. Solid matchup here for Ayuk, so he's another must-start wide receiver for me on the week. When healthy, Debo has actually been very consistent this season, which has not really been his MO throughout his career. He's been one of those more boom or bust type of assets, but recently he has really started to be a lot safer of a bet week in and week out. Last week, he went ahead and was the wide receiver 17. So for me, him and Ayuk are basically both must starts unless you have like some crazy loaded wide receiver core where you got like, I don't know, maybe somehow you have, maybe Jefferson plays this week, so you got Jefferson, you got Tyreek, and you got Cooper Kupp or something crazy, right? Or you made some trades, your wide receiver core is on fire, then yeah, you don't have to start Deebo Samuel technically. But for most teams that don't have like these star-studded receiver rooms, you're starting both Ayuk and Deebo and not even thinking twice about it. Now, Juwan Jennings is one of those receivers that you will just randomly, like you might be falling asleep in the 4 o'clock slate. You're taking a nap, you drank a little too much during the game, you ate a little too much food, and you just look up and you see fucking Juwan Jennings catching like an 80-yard bomb from Big Cock Brock Purdy, who looks very, very back recently, or last week, coming out the bye after being shit for like 3 games straight. Oh my gosh. He got 80 yards and a touchdown. And then you see him catch another ball for 50 yards. And you're like, wow. Owen Wilson style. That was a big game. But you're never actually going to know when that's going to happen, so you got to sit him. For the Bucs, even though Big Mike Evans dropped the easiest touchdown imaginable against the Titans, he still went ham. Now, Mike Evans is prone to do that. There will be, I would say, 4 or 5, maybe 6 times any season you turn on a Bucs game, or you on red zone, Scott Hansen flips to it, and it's like, Evans is wide open, and you see the ball coming, and it's like actually like a good, decently thrown ball from Baker. It's not like some shitty ball where it's missed, and he's got to like turn on the NOS to get to the ball, or it's like a little bit underthrown, he's got to run back to it. No, I'm talking about what hits him like right in the chest, or it's up here, it fucking smacks him, it doinks off of his helmet, and it's like, wow. How did he drop that? If you remember last year, there was a game when the Bucs were trying to make a push at the end of the season. Tom Brady threw, crazy to think that Tom Brady was playing football last year. He threw just a laser to him, and he just dropped it. He was wide open. I don't remember who it was against, but I had Mike Evans on my fantasy team and Tom Brady. I remember it really pissing me off, and I think it was maybe the Christmas game. I don't really remember too much of that game, though, but yeah, it's kind of frustrating, but you're just kind of used to it at this point in the season. He's going to make some stupid fucking drops, but he's still a Hall of Famer. 6 receptions on 10 targets. If you don't think Mike Evans belongs in the Hall of Fame, you just don't really know ball. 6 receptions on 10 targets for 143 yards and a score. Now he faces a 49ers defense that looked significantly better coming out the bye last week against the Jags. Evans has been a solid wide receiver all season long, and even with the matchup scaring me a little bit, the secondary hasn't been the best, so I think you're still starting Evans, but you're obviously at mercy of Mayfield just getting plowed out all night long in this game, and then he's just not able to get the ball out to Mike Evans. Chris Godwin is in that fringe start range that we've kind of talked about during the video, he has gotten 6 or more targets in 6 straight games, and we know the volume is going to be there for Mr. Godwin, but, you know, the volume might be there, but it's not like he's utilizing the volume very heavily either. He has only scored once this season, 1 score on the season, and against the 49ers defense, it doesn't seem like this is the game where he wets his whistle, wets the beak, and scores. Now, he's going to be okay this week, but again, I'm not going to bang the fucking table here, like fucking Leo in Wolf of Wall Street. I'm just not going to do that. I think you should do that for Evans, but not for Mr. Godwin. Trey Palmer is another one of those guys, solid player, but with all the cooks in the kitchen in Tampa Bay, Otton, Evans, Godwin, Rashad with 2 A's White, you got to stay clear away from Trey Palmer. Next up, we got the New York Jumbo Jets at the No One Circles the Wagons, like the Buffalo Bills. The Bills have fired Ken Dorsey, and now they have one of their, I think he's the pass game coordinator, formerly Joe Brady of the Panthers, also of the LSU Tigers when they won with Joe Shiesty. Interesting. He is now the offensive coordinator. Maybe that fixes things. I don't know if it will, though. But, you know, interesting tidbit of information to throw into the video. You know, something cool you could tell your friends on Sunday if they don't know. You know, if you're friends with a bunch of casual football fans, some of these things I say in the video, you can just throw out there and you'll look like a fucking genius, right? You'll look like some some NFL guru just for knowing some news that, like, most people probably know. But again, if you're, you know, some casual fans, they probably won't know. Garrett Wilson, the Bills defense, despite being injured, looks better than their putrid offense. Wilson has had 12 or more targets in 4 straight games and has been a top 20 wide receiver in all of those games. And I think he continues to that streak this week, getting a bunch of targets, being a top 20 receiver. Regardless of how much of a war crime it is to watch Zach Wilson take the snaps as the starting quarterback in the NFL, Garrett Wilson will be just fine. Allen Lazard has straight up stone hands. Patchy the Pirate with a hook for a hand might be better at catching the ball than Allen Lazard. Clear sit. Xavier Gibson. You know everything has truly gone to shit when your special team stud is your wide receiver 3. Another clear sit. Stephon Diggs. Trayvon Diggs on Twitter has been going off. It is hilarious as a Bills hater, as a Dolphins fan to see. He's like, 14 don't deserve this. Talking about Diggs, number 14. He don't deserve this. Josh Allen, he basically said Josh Allen wasn't shit until Diggs was there. Very funny. The Bills might be dead, but if I know one thing, though, women, they come, they grow. Saturday through Sunday, Monday. I do know one thing, though. That is about the Bills, is that Josh Allen will continue to force the ball to Diggs. In week 1 against the Jets, even in a loss, a disgusting game from Josh Allen, Diggs had 10 receptions on 13 targets for 102 yards and a touchdown, and he yelled, "Ski!" into the camera. Even with the matchup being very, very tough, you have to start Stephon Diggs. Gabe Davis. The Bills fans want to send Gabe Davis straight to the gulag, and honestly, I feel the same way. He is one of the most boomer bust wide receivers in the NFL, and with a matchup as sharp as the Jets, and with an offense looking as completely limp dick as the Bills, there is no reason to be starting Gabe Davis. Khalil Shakira has had a few... Today, Junior has had a few solid weeks in a row recently. Not last week, but against the Jets, you can't really expect that huge game unless he finds the end zone. Next up, we got the Seattle Seahawks at the Los Angeles Rams. Now, when it comes to the Rams, with Stafford back, I am ready to have blind confidence in Cooper Kupp yet again. I know it hasn't been smooth sailing recently. He's been going through some fucking crazy waves, but the Seahawks defense has been pretty hit or miss weekly, and with how good Kupp is, as long as he gets the correct amount of targets, he could easily be the top 12 receiver in any given game. Puka Nacua, just like with Cooper Kupp, I'm going to go ahead and blindly start Puka, blindly believe in him with Stafford back. Puka has been one of the best rookie receivers all season long. If they both bust again at the same time, fucking Oogie Cookie style, then maybe it's time to start worrying, but I'm not panicking just yet. Tutu Atwell was a solid start without Kupp, but with Kupp and Puka both healthy, there's no reason to even consider Atwell. You know, not like Stafford is playing that unreal that he can rely on 3 different receivers. You rely on 3 different ones for fantasy. For the Seahawks, Metcalf is another classic case of the boomer bust player, but with Metcalf, his busts aren't as, like, really bad where it sets you back 1,000 years where he gets like 4 fantasy points, right? He'll probably be the wide receiver 40 at worst. The matchup against the Rams isn't the best, but it is not like you aren't starting Metcalf on most teams. Last week, he had 7 receptions on 12 targets for 98 yards. Tyler Lockett is a boomer bust fella as well, but this man's busts are larger than the ones you see on the hub. A straight-up bukkake onto you on some weeks. I talk about this all the time. He is basically like a firework, you know? Sometimes it's a beautiful show. Sometimes you end up with a couple less fingers like your name is Jason Pierre-Paul. Now, last week against the Commanders, he goes bananas. 8 catches, 92 yards, and a touchdown. Again, you can never really quit Lockett, but in tougher matchups like this, like, no, not the cupcake matchups, I should say, not like a uber tough matchup, but not a cupcake matchup. You got to move him down the rankings. JSN has been the most safe receiver on this Seattle Seahawks offense as of recently, but this week I'm just going to stay away. Next up, we move to "Cause You Waited All Day for Sunday Night." This game is actually kind of interesting. Mr. Unlimited and the Denver Broncos going up against the cold like Minnesota Vikings and Josh Dobbs in Mile High. Sunday Night Football. Jefferson, there is not a lot of information on Jefferson as we speak right now. He could return this week. He could not return this week. It seems like he's been scratching at the bitch. The bit? Is that the term? Not the bitch. To play. But again, it's not a lock that he's going to play. If there's even a chance he plays in a limited fashion, I'm playing him, though. He's one of the best receivers in the NFL. And I know, Nick, the Broncos defense has gotten so much better recently. Okay, buddy. Okay. Jordan Addison, despite a bit of a slump over the last 2 weeks, Addison has proven to us, and that he's proven to us a majority of the year, I should say, that he's incredibly talented. Dobbs also looks good, and honestly, I think if Jefferson returns, that may actually make Addison a safer option because he wouldn't have to face the best corner, which in this case is Patrick Surtain II. Now, Brandon Powell, regardless on if Jefferson starts or not, I would stay away from Powell, even though Dobbs has been sparking things up. For the Denver Broncos, we got Courtland Sutton as a start. Now, Sutton is a demon in the red zone. He's a touchdown demon. Man has scored a touchdown in 7 of his 9 starts on the season, and he cashed my first touchdown bet last night. I bet $3 on him, won $51. I know I'm basically rich now. Scoring in 4 straight games. Now, the Vikings defense is definitely better and keeps getting better and better as the season goes along. But at this point in the season, it feels like you kind of just brainlessly start Sutton as the wide receiver 3 kind of range. This week, now again, not the wide receiver 3, but like the wide receiver 25 plus range, right? The wide receiver 3 range until he cools down. Jerry Jeudy, with Sutton being the number 1 receiver on the teams in terms of targets, I definitely would continue to avoid Jeudy at all costs. He has 1 score on the year, which is 3 short of Abe Lincoln's 4 score. Someone had to have thought that was funny. Come on. Laugh. I know no one thought that was funny. That was like a fucking dad joke, and I'm only 24. For me, he's a clear sit weekly. Marvin Mims is a guy that I basically begged on my knees, for Sean Payton, to use him. But at this point, with him getting just 1 or few targets in like 5 straight fucking games, the writing is on the wall here. No need for any heartache. My achy break your heart like Billy Ray Cyrus. There's no reason to believe in this guy. Just leave him on the waiver wire. And it hurts like a butt cheek on a stick. Final game here. Super Bowl rematch. The Eagles at the Kansas City Chiefs on Monday Night Football. A.J. Brown has been one of the more consistent receivers in fantasy football this season, up there with Reek and Amon-Ra St. Brown. He has been a top 12 receiver in 6 of the last 7 games and a top 3 receiver in 3 of those 7 games. The Chiefs' defense is definitely better than I expected, but I also think that this game will be a higher scoring type of bloodbath affair. Problem is with that is the island games, the games that are Thursday, Sunday night, Monday night, the solo games have just been going under at a very high clip this season. Kind of one of those where I don't do it because I don't like betting the under. It's kind of fucking boring, but if you like making money, just betting the unders on these night games has been very, very profitable this season. And if this does end up breaking the mold here and being a high-scoring game, Brown's going to be given a ton of opportunities to score. This man has 4 touchdowns in the last 3 weeks. You're obviously going to start him. You didn't need to if A.J. Brown was your number 1 receiver, you didn't need to fucking watch this part of the video to know to start him. Maybe you did because you're like, oh my god, Nick is so funny, right? That's a joke, obviously. I'm trying not to suck my own cock metaphorically on here, but maybe just have fun. I think a lot of the reason why people watch the videos is not necessarily because I'm hitting you with a million things of information, which I kind of do in the video, and I think I'm very helpful. A lot of people in the comments, they're winning a lot, or their teams are decent enough to, hey, week 11, and you're still give a fuck about fantasy football, which for some people isn't the case anymore. So I'm happy to do that. Some people are just watching, have fun, listen in the car, or burn some time at work, or just have something nice to listen to before you go to bed, So I hope no one listens to me while they're going to sleep, but I can always guarantee you people do that, because I always listen to podcasts when I'm going to bed. So Devontae Smith fell into a dark place from weeks 3 through 7, but over the last 2 games, he has been a top 15 receiver in both games. With how on fire Brown is, and with the offense seemingly running it through him, it is hard to say that Smith is a lock to be a top 12 guy. But this game seemingly being a shootout, like I said, I do think he could hit that mark. Definitely a guy you want in your lineup, regardless of how negative what I said may have sounded. Julio Jones, wide receiver 3 now on the Eagles, 1 reception in 2 straight games. I love Julio, but we can all acknowledge that, hey, this isn't the same guy he used to be. Now, is he like fully washed up? No. But are we expecting him to get 5 or more targets in any given game with Brown and Smith healthy? The answer would be, fuck no, baby. Moving into the Chiefs section of things here, Rashee Rice is another one of those fringe start type of guys. He does appear to be the number 1 on the team, but we all know besides Kelsey, Mahomes just like spreading the ball around, that Oprah reference that we made earlier. In this type of game environment, Rice should be fine, but he's far from being a must-start player because, again, this could be a game where he ends up with like 3 targets and just not doing too much. MVS, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, is destined to have another one of those solid games coming up where seemingly people start trying to talk themselves back into MVS. I've done it before. I am a year free of MVS. I'm done talking about him. Never allow yourself to do that. He's a must-sit. Sky Moore, to me, is a talented player, but he just doesn't get enough targets for you to consider starting him. He's a clear sit, just like MVS. So thank you guys all so much for watching. To put a bow on things, if you guys did end up enjoying, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button down below if you're new. Whether you are new to the channel or not, make sure to leave a like on today's video. It helps me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotoriousFantasy if you'd like access to my weekly rankings. That'll be posted probably sometime tomorrow or Thursday morning, as well as an answer to any of the questions you guys may have. Make sure you guys check out the Patreon link in the video description for $7.50 a month. Check out one of the videos on your screen if you haven't seen them already. I love you guys all so much. Again, thank you guys for 30,000 subscribers that we hit about a week ago. I love you guys all so much. Hope you have a great one. And as always, good boy.